If you're confused about the circle of fifths, then you're in luck, because in this video I'm going to simplify the circle of fifths and get you on track to mastering music theory. I'll break down the circle of fifths into two parts, what it is and how to use it. Let's not overcomplicate things. All the circle of fifths is a tool that helps you understand key signatures. Let's work from the outside in. The outside letters represent the major keys. And if you go clockwise from C, each letter is a perfect fifth apart, which is 7 half steps. But if you move anti-clockwise from the C, each letter is a perfect fourth apart, which is 5 half steps. So C to G is a perfect fifth, which is 7 half steps, and C to F is a perfect fourth, which is 5 half steps. If you're unfamiliar with half steps and whole steps, then you can find out more about those in the video that I've put together on basic music theory. This video just uses half steps and whole steps as a simple method for learning your piano scales, so go and check it out after this video. Moving from the outer ring of the circle of fifths into the next section, which is the cymbals. This is a treble clef, this is the staff, and these are the sharps or flats in that key. I'll cover what sharps and flats are in a little bit, but first it's useful to know that these lines and spaces on the staff represent notes that are on a piano or keyboard. I'm going to use this great book, The Classic Piano Course, to help us out. Now this book helped me to understand and read piano notes in sheet music, so I highly recommend that you go and get this book for yourself. It's linked in the description. But if we open this book, you can see that there's a nice little diagram that shows us which notes the lines and spaces represent. In the spaces, the notes are D, F, A, C, E, and on the lines it's E, G, B, D, F. And there are many different ways that we can learn these lines and spaces. For example, to remember the notes that are represented by the lines, we can use the every good boy does fine method, which is E, G, B, D, F. Going back to the circle of fifths, if we start on the C and move clockwise, a sharp is added each time that we move to the next letter. And similarly, if we start on the C and move anti-clockwise, a flat is added each time that we move to the next letter. But now, I don't know what sharps and flats are. A sharp raises a note by half a step, and a flat lowers a note by half a step. So if you add a sharp to F, you get F sharp. If you add a sharp to C, you get C sharp. If you add a flat to B, you get B flat. And if you add a flat to A, you get A flat. There are some cases where you would call a B flat an A sharp, or an A flat a G sharp, or a C sharp a D flat, or an F sharp a G flat. But I'm not going to get onto that today because that is for more advanced learners. If we go back to the circle of fifths and start on the C, which has 0 sharps and flats, as we move clockwise, we go to the G, which has 1 sharp, the D has 2, A has 3, E has 4, and B has 5. And then if we go back to C and go anti-clockwise, C has 0 sharps or flats, F has 1 flat, B flat has 2, E flat has 3, A flat has 4, and D flat has 5. Each time that we go around the circle of fifths, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, a sharp or flat is added each time. But how do you know where a sharp and flat is on the keyboard when you look at it in the circle of fifths? Well, this is where learning what the lines and spaces mean in sheet music comes in handy. It comes in handy because the circle of fifths literally shows you what lines and spaces are either being raised or lowered by half a note. B major has 5 sharps. Now this might be super confusing for you at the minute, but I'm going to break it down, so don't worry. It has F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. If we start on the B and move anti-clockwise through the circle of fifths, we'll see that a sharp is getting taken away each time. So start on the B, we've got F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. Moving anti-clockwise to the E, we take away the A sharp. Anti-clockwise to the A, take away the D sharp. Anti-clockwise to the D, take away the G sharp. Anti-clockwise to the G, take away the C sharp. And moving anti-clockwise back to the C, which has 0 sharps or flats. Now if we look at the flat side of things and start on the D flat, and if we move back clockwise through the circle of fifths back to the C, you'll see that a flat is taken away each time. So if we start on the D flat, we have B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. Moving clockwise to the A flat, we just take away the G flat. Clockwise to the E flat, take away the D flat. Clockwise to the B flat, take away the A flat. Then clockwise to the F, take away the E flat, and then clockwise back to the C, which has 0 flats or sharps. If we move further in the circle now, and we'll get onto the relative minor. So this symbol here just represents the relative minor of the key that is on the outside of the circle. Every major key has a relative minor, and that relative minor of the major key has the same amount of sharps and flats. C major and A minor both have no sharps or flats, so that means A minor is the relative minor of C major, because it shares the same amount of flats and sharps. B major on the other hand has 5 sharps, and so does G sharp minor. I actually cover more about the relative minor and what it is in my music theory video. In this next section I'm going to break down practical ways of how we can actually use the circle of fifths. Firstly, we can use the circle of fifths to change the key of a song. Changing the key of a song is also known as modulation. We can use the circle of fifths to change a current key to its perfect fifth key. For example, the perfect fifth of C is G, because G is right next to C on the circle of fifths. And you'll notice that every time I go round the circle of fifths clockwise, so from C to G is a perfect fifth, from G to D is a perfect fifth, from D to A, that's a perfect fifth, and from A to E, that's a perfect fifth, and from E to B, that's also a perfect fifth. So if I wanted to change the perfect fifth key, then I would just look for a letter that's either clockwise or anti-clockwise of the current key that I'm in, and find a common chord, add it to the chord progression that I'm playing, and then swiftly move into that new key. One way I can transition from C to G is by using a chord that they both share in common. So here's a chord progression in C major. We have C, E minor, D minor and A minor. So let's transition to the perfect fifth, which in this case is the key of G major. So we'll use the same chords of C and E minor, but then what we'll do is introduce a new chord which is D major. The only difference in this chord is that it's introducing the F sharp, whereas before we were playing the D minor, which was just D, F and A, but now we're playing the D major, which is D, F sharp and A. So then from the D, we'll then play an A minor. C, E minor and A minor are the common chords between the keys of C major and G major. D introduces the perfect fifth key with a new sharp. Remember, C is next to G on the circle of fifths, so it just introduces one new sharp. So that means the only difference between the keys of C major and G major is the F sharp. So let's play that progression and we'll notice that it's a much smoother transition because we're transitioning into the perfect fifth of that key. So we'll play the C, the E minor, then play the D, which is transitioning into the new key, the perfect fifth key, which is G major, and introducing that new note of F sharp, and then we'll move to the A minor. So now we've transitioned into that key of G major, and I can continue playing all the G major chords from now on because I've already transitioned into that key. So you can use the circle of fifths to change the key of a song, but another way that you can use the circle of fifths is to create chord progressions. The circle of fifths chord progression is a well-known chord progression in the music industry, and it's made up of the following chords: A minor, D minor, G, C, F, and B diminished. The diminished chord is placed here as a shortcut, E major and the A minor, which is resolving back to our tonic. To have the full circle of fifths chord progression, it would mean travelling around the whole circle of fifths, which is way too long if you just want a short chord progression that just has 4 chords or even 8 chords. So what we do is just place a shortcut in here by using different intervals. We could use an interval of a diminished chord, a major second or a minor third, and so on. But this depends on how long you want your chord progression to be. So if we go back to the circle of fifths chord progression that we were just looking at, we have the A minor, D minor, G major, C major, F major, B diminished, which is our shortcut, to the E major and the A minor, which is resolving back to our tonic. So like I said, you can change the length of the circle of fifths chord progression by adding in different intervals. In this case, we use the diminished interval. Music theory is great to learn, but it can be so easy to get overwhelmed and burned out because you're learning way too much. If you were ever a music student, then you were probably encouraged to learn as much as you can, as quick as you can. But that's not helpful. What you need to do is apply the 80-20 method. If you don't know what the 80-20 method is and you want to start applying it to your music and your learning so that you can become a better producer and a better musician, then I highly recommend finding out more about it. But you're in luck, because I've already done a video that covers it. In this video, I also cover how you can become 37 times better than you are today, just in 1 year. If you want to check it out, then you can see that video right here.